Hello, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live. I'm Dr. Camille Preston, founder of AIM Leadership, a business psychologist, and the author of Living Real. And I am thrilled to be here with my colleague, Candace Elizabeth, who is a passionate l- person. You're a passionate living realer. I don't know how to say that. You're passionate about putting ideas into action, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you today.
Yeah, I know. I'm so grateful to be here as well. And these lives, we really hope are bringing value. And we would love to hear your feedback and what you're thinking and what you're thinking about differently. So thanks for joining us if you are here.
Yes, absolutely. And just as context, I'm living real. This is the last week of summer vacation with my kids. So we are up in a more rustic setting, but that's life, right? That's all the pieces in between. And what we're really excited to continue the conversation around is that first step into what does it mean to live real and how do you put these ideas into action and where is the right place to start. So let's dive in. Candace, where should we start?
Yeah, so I think we've kind of hit on a little bit about what living real is. And so one question I want to ask is what do you think is the fear people face when they start trying to implement this, to try being real in their everyday life? What do you think that fear is?
That's great. So, for people new to our live streams, we think about life as a sine wave. There's highs and there's lows. And what happens is we all want the highs and we don't want the lows. And so we often try to put the lows in the basement. We like put them in a box, put duct tape over it, tuck it into the basement, pretend it didn't happen. But when we don't experience the full range of life, our life gets shallow and we feel a little bit more flat and we um, experience more loneliness or more burnout or less energy. And so the concept of reeling is really desirable. Like of course I want to have this, like the full range of life experiences. And yet the fear is really real too, which is that if I bring my full self to the table, it might be too much. Or people like the polished pretty side of my life, they don't want to hear what's really happening in my life. And so I think we have some innate fear that we won't be accepted if we're our full self. And we also have a lot of conditioning of what should happen in life and how we should show up and the face we should forward. And so it's kind of an internal fear matched with an external societal expectation. Does that resonate?
Yeah, it's resonating a lot. And I think what you're really hitting on are not only just the shoulds of life, because we all live with them. We have all of these external expectations and then internal expectations. So we're just like battling that all the time. And I think what you're saying is living real is really pulling back that layer and just being like, okay, it doesn't mean we have to like open the whole closet, but let's at least venture in and say, okay, here's what I'm actually going through in this time and space. And do you think it's a fear of people being seen? Do you think that that's a hard thing for people to just kind of open up about? And I want to also get your input on the balance of that because I know that
Yeah.
people might be hearing this and they're like, "Oh, nope, I don't want a therapy session right now." So,
Yeah.
how do we navigate that?
Um, so I think it's a competing commitment. We want really genuine, deep, authentic relationships. We want to have that level of authenticity, uh, and yet we don't want to maybe put our backside on the line. We don't want to take the risk of having that depth of connection. And and so the illusions, I think, build up like, I'll just keep it nice, I'll just be polite, I'll just keep it safe. But what that actually ends up doing is having people pull back. And so the fear of sharing your full self actually stacks and makes relationships less fulfilling and less fulfilling over time. Um, I think the fear is always worse than the actuality. When people take a leap of faith and they share something, they're often struck by the compassion in those around them. And I often urge people to start with really friendly places, like people who you have had a positive experience with. Take that one a little bit further. Maybe leave the boardroom for a couple of years down down the line, but but start. And so part of that is you could start with yourself, being more real with yourself, like checking in and being like, what is it I actually feel like right now? What is it that's happening? Or start with someone who you've felt safe sharing with in the past, a friendly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and like you said, there are ways of going about it in inappropriate ways. That did not come out at all. But because leaders, we have like such a lot of expectation on ourselves for how to deliver, quality, even feedback, and we can see this
Mhm.
in leadership where it's like they're trying to come in and give feedback in a way that's constructive, and it's not always received. So there's different elements too within living real outside of just the personal life. Like you were kind of
Yeah.
saying. And, we found that leaders who are implementing this in their personal life are then able to have better, more round, better conversations with those that they lead as a result.
Yeah.
And
Can I double click on that? Um, so if you think about your life and you have a lot of shoulds and a lot of rules and a lot of like images and brands and things that you're trying to keep that all up, that's energy that you're putting towards those rules or those shoulds. And that's energy that's coming away from being the most present you could be or being the best leader that you could be. So it's a little counterintuitive to actually let those down is a way that we reclaim energy. We get energy back by almost being worried, less controlling or less worried.
That's such a good point. And I know that you've been doing a lot of work around this new way of looking at energy management because like we
Mm.
talked about in the past, burnout is such a word, right? It's out there, it's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it, but we're not really moving through it. And so what I'm hearing you say is like by not having these conversations and holding it all in, we're actually doubling up on that energy reserve being depleted. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It takes energy to contain all of that. So absolutely, it's almost like a hole in your bucket, right? Like if you have a bucket of energy, all the shoulds and the illusions and the rules can drain your energy, but you also are diminishing your energy because you're not experiencing highs and lows. You're not experiencing that full range, and that is depleting. If I could just put a little texture on this, I think in a very simple example of a should is in the workplace, decisions should be strictly logical. They should be strictly cognitive. They should be like a head focus, like what is the best decision, bottom line for the business. And what we believe is that it's actually the best decisions are integrated. They include the head, the heart, the body, that kind of inner intuition, and they integrate the full self, the full set of decision making criteria, and that actually takes less energy over time, and it makes better decisions over time. So it's an integration that of yourself, of your different ways of making decisions, that actually sets you up to be really successful
Yeah.
ultimately and
Well,
happier.
right. And that's the thing that I think you're really trying to really help people navigate is that we keep hearing that balance word and it's almost like I don't know, it feels impossible when you're thinking about it like how do I actually balance and what I'm hearing you say is it's the integration aspect of like
Yeah,
you have all of these layers. And
yeah,
we're really conditioned to believe that it's like really safe to just be fine. Like if we just say that we're fine and everything's working well, it's safer than actually feeling more into life and being more alive. What do you have to layer in on that?
yes. So we've just done a big piece on this idea of enlivenment, and enlivenment is almost like what I would describe as renewable energy, as opposed to activation, which is um, like a stress-driven cortisol deadline, pressure prompted, and for many people, just the distinction of activated versus enlivened is a new way of thinking about it is an because we are so conditioned to use stress and cortisol to drive results, that thinking about a renewable nurturing integrated version is not in a lot of people's lexicons. What we are seeing is that people are saying, my team is so burned out, I have to do something different. And that's usually the gateway into being curious of like, how do I connect more authentically, how do I create more genuine relationships? sorry, my brain's popping. There's, I was reading an article last night. I think it was a Fast Company article about how people don't have friends at work. And you could say this is great, like, they're diversifying, they have friends outside of their work, but what they're saying is that people don't have as many friends as they did in years past. But people who feel like they have a friend at work actually are much more engaged. They're much more productive. They're much more focused. They have that place that they go when they go to the workplace. So for business leaders who are listening, that idea of creating a genuine connection, someone where people feel like they can be themselves in the workplace, is actually one of the greatest retention skills that you can have.
Right. Well, and with everything that we're facing currently, I mean, having people stay, I mean, we see turnover all the time now, and really in specific industries, but being able to
Yeah.
feel safe and comfortable. And that's really interesting that they're, the relationships are depleting at work. So I will definitely have to look at that and see what, if it's a part of the shallowing, which is what we're about to talk about. And, just really where that disconnection is. So for those that don't know what shallowing is, do you want to dive into that just a little bit and tell people?
Sure. So if reeling is feeling the full range of highs and lows in your lived experience, shallowing is when you start to avoid or try to put hard things into that metaphoric box, the duct tape and in the basement. So the shallowing is when we don't deal with hard things, we actually lose the ability to feel joy. And so the range of our lived experiences become more and more narrow. And that manifests in a lot of different ways. We could have less real relationships. We could have less diverse relationships. We could have less authentic relationships. We're seeing this that people are getting less diverse. Their news sets are becoming more shallowed. Their relationships are becoming more shallowed. And just like our vitality, we want to cross train at the gym, use all our different muscles. And just like we want to eat a diverse palate so we get all the nutrients we need, diversity is really, really important in terms of lived experiences and emotions and building our capacity. So shallowing is we don't want to live a shallowed life. We want to live a rich, full, real life.
Yeah. Well, and even on that, like if somebody doesn't really recognize how they're shallowing, what are some of the signs that they may not even be aware of?
It's a great question. Um, I think the easiest gateway in is to notice when a relationship feels flat. When you spend time with someone and you're like, yeah, right? And like you're not energized or enlivened, then you can start to say, were they shallowing? Was I shallowing? Were there rules about this expectation? Were there not? Um, we can see it's another gateway in is to start to build awareness or start to notice when are you really um, invested in an image or a brand? When are you really committed to someone seeing you in a certain way, or believing that your life is in a certain way? I think another gateway is starting to feel that flatness, starting to feel that like that dullness, whether there is loneliness, isolation, burnout, anxiety, or depression, or you're just feeling a little flat. All of those are gateways to start to say, there's an opportunity here.
Right, right. Well, and it's like that meh feeling. It's the only way I
Meh,
can, like
meh.
it's um,
So
and
good.
because it is, and
Can I
that's
throw
kind
out
of
another? Can I throw out
what.
another? I'm totally marking my age, the demographic of my kids. But my kids have been really into this cartoon, Captain Underpants. And Captain Underpants, the main character, the villain is a middle school principal who like personifies the yeah. And Captain Underpants is his like alter ego that comes out, who's so enlivened and like desires to do good in the world. And like it's a great way of saying the dichotomy that we're seeing in our world for
Right. I
those
think,
who have the younger kids that are in this
yeah.
demographic.
Well, and that's the thing is like when we can actually visualize it, it helps us even recognize our own internal barriers to seeing this for what it is. And, even yourself, you've said this over and over in your gatherings that you're having, all the dinners and everything. about
Yeah.
how you came through this realization and you had these moments where you were really having to take a step back and look and be like, am I shallowing? Like, am I being
Hmm.
real in this moment? And so if you feel comfortable, what's an example from your own life that's really helped you not only carry this message forward, but make it real for others?
Mm. I think one that's a little counterintuitive, but I think captures it is, well, there's a lot, but the book came out of, I had 5 deaths in 5 months. And the first death was my most beloved family member. It was my uncle, which the world does not kind of categorize as like someone you should have this much grief about. He was widowed, he had no kids. I was his closest family member. Um, but I remember in, we were in the hospital in the neuro ICU for a week and then hospice for a week. And horrible, like nothing that anyone would choose. But I remember even amid the depth of sadness, the highs of love and delight and being able to tell stories about him to his caregivers and watch them light up. So like here was
Mhm.
this man that I got to like tune in and just like scan his life and like remember all the amazing things and tell them in a way that he was hearing them and kind of re-remembering his life, but all these people were coming to meet him. And so again, that's an example of like depth of sadness, highs of connection. But then when I came home after he died, I remember I didn't want to stop talking about him. I wasn't ready to stop telling the stories. And the world was kind of done with me telling the stories of him. Like we have kind of rules in our society about like, you can grieve this type of person for this long and this type of person for this long, and then you got to pull your bootstraps up and get back in the soccer carpool and the board meetings. Um, and so I started to notice the people who asked, who were curious, who listened. And then I started to realize that those were the people that I didn't really need to talk about my uncle anymore. I just needed to have real conversations with people. I wanted to have conversations that mattered about things that were real. And I think I'm not alone in that. I think we're living in a time where people are craving a genuineness. And the challenge is that we often, complaining is the lowest common denominator. It's easy to connect often through complaining. That's BMW, bitch, moan, and whine. Um, we want to build authentic connections from like places of hope and possibility and have that depth of realness. And I
Yeah.
think if we've seen anything from these events, that people are coming out to in droves and people are craving these types of conversations. So it's really, I'm hopeful.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned so many things that I think as we continue to experience life, we're starting to recognize the need for that openness and to hold space in ways that are, I don't want to say productive, but that do provide support. And what you've even just from what you've mentioned about these different events that you've held and been a part of is that people come not expecting to experience such I would say a resonance within and the conversations, whether it's parallels in their lives or similar experiences, or oh, I'm going through this and so are you. And it's because you've created that safe container for people to come together and open up in that way. And it's
Yeah.
really amazing because we can do this on such a massive level if we're just really open to ourselves. And just even hearing you say, like, we don't even allow the time and space for us to process through things, it's so true. And I think that could even layer into why people are nervous to like live real. But
So there.
seeing the potential and the possibility and like hearing all of these stories that you will continue to share, it's really inspiring. And I think it can help us navigate the way forward together in a way that's really, again, just real, authentic, and creative at the same time. Um,
So one of the things that is happening in 2 weeks, we're going to be in DC and have a number of events. If you're there and want to connect, let us know. But we're bringing together a group of hospital CEOs, people who have been doing really, really, really hard things for the they've been doing hard things for their career, but now it's particularly hard. They led through COVID. They've led through a lot of different transformations. They're now leading through um, policy changes, HR1, and they're saying for us to be effective leading these hospitals, these massive institutions, we need to be more real ourselves. We need to understand, what does that mean for me personally, and how do I then bring that to my constituents so that I can have the biggest impact. So it can feel like a really personal message. And when leaders want to have that compelling presence, they need to take that step forward personally.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that because, again, we see it in our everyday conversations with these leaders, and the fact that it gives that potential and possibility for other leaders to be like, "Oh, I never considered it this way," and that's one of the things I want to ask is, what's the cost of avoiding all of this? Like, if
Mm.
leaders don't choose to make a decision that's different about how they approach conversations, what's that cost going to be in the future?
That is such a great question. And I think it's hard to, I think we're going to have to put it in the show notes because I don't have the statistics on the top of my head, but there's deep financial costs in terms of burnout and retention and attrition and disengagement in the workplace, but there's massive costs to your health and your well-being, to your happiness and your fulfillment, to your ability to bring forth things that matter in the world. And we turn so often to the amazing book by Peter Attia, chapter 16, Outlive. It's all about relationships. And I have a very dear friend, college classmate, Seth McLennan, who's a world-renowned cardiologist. And if you know me, you know I'm bionic and that I need a world-renowned electrocardiologist. And Seth was one of the first people who said, Camille, you're going to live longer than me because of the quality of relationships. And so we've had a lot of fun playing with that. But quality relationships really matter. And you can start today. Start today by thinking, who is someone that I really admire, that I really value my time with them, and then spend more time with those people. Figure out what makes those relationships work. Figure out how you can spend more time in that space, because each step forward that you make to live more real will have a massive benefit to you and your well-being, but also to the people that you interface with. We'll put
Yeah,
statistics in the show notes, but we
yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
that.
Well, and it's funny because you answered part of my next question, which was how are we connecting this with long-term health? And I mean, we're already seeing the decline of mental health, and physical health also follows when mental health declines, with isolation being such an epidemic right now. So you kind of answered that. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Um, I want to circle just back to this idea of integration. We talked about integrating ourselves, head, heart, body, mind, spirit. We need to integrate that intelligence, like make decisions from integrated places. But the wellness is really about an integrated sense of yourself. Like you can't do one thing without the other. And so I just think that first step is such a vital step. And the anticipation's worse than the actuality. If you do nothing else, spend time just thinking about a relationship where you feel like you can be very real, and what it is that makes that relationship so safe and fulfilling for you. And then take that into your next team meeting. Think about those parts that you can say, how do I communicate that to the people I care about in my workplace and in my home? Because it's a simple step at a time.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for guiding us through all of this today. And thank you for everyone that's joined. And
Yeah.
Camille, I don't know how you do it sometimes. Camille came in straight from a podcast interview that will live later this month. And so or later next
Fun.
month. So I'm just so thankful for your energy and your time, and for anybody that joined. As we come
Yeah.
to a close, again, we mentioned a lot of ways that this work is coming into the world. And if you're curious to know more about how AIM leadership can really support your team, or maybe it's you as an individual, we just hope that you'll have that conversation, because this is what we're doing for the next several months. Anything
We're
else
really
you
excited.
want?
If you are a skier and you want to live real on the ski slopes, we're pulling together the best possible ski retreat for living real at Powder Mountain. So give us a shout out and then send us questions. What resonates for you? Where are you living real? Where do you want more help? We're really eager to open the conversation. And if you're in DC, let me know. I'll be there in 2 weeks. We look forward to seeing you.